commenting on anybody's cooking, at the dinner table, nothing washes down something dry like a tall glass of milk. It's a drink fortifying our diets for centuries. At this point, dairy milk is actually kind of boring. Unless you turn your attention to a debate that's been bubbling up recently. Are we missing out when we pasteurize milk instead of drinking it raw, fresh from the cow? Legally, we can't buy raw milk in Arkansas, but now the debate over whether to change that is anything but dry.
When people experience it, it's going to be life-changing.
Raw milk has literally transformed a lot of people's lives.
Passions aroused over the most basic of beverages.
From a public health perspective, this genuinely keeps me awake at night.
A sample of voices on opposite sides of a trend. A perceived wellness benefit by drinking raw milk versus the public health risks of drinking milk that has not been rendered safe by heating it.
There is no safe way to handle raw milk that makes the risk zero or even negligible.
This is Carrot. That's my sweet girl.
Raw milk is having a moment. Across Arkansas, you find groups of people drawn to milk as fresh as possible. Rich in protein, it goes from inside the cows of places like the Live Healthy Farm in Garland County right into the bodies of the farm owners, Betty and John Ballard, and their young kids. They are unlikely midlife farmers.
There was a period of time where we're doing the city life, living in suburbia, on a plane every week.
There was a picture that ran through from 2019 where John and I were in New York City at a 10-seater sushi restaurant. And now we have a regenerative farm with 4 dairy cows on it.
The Ballards say as their unorthodox farming odyssey formed, they discovered a wider community that defies an easy label. It's a mix of traditional, environmentally, and healthy conscious types associated with the left, combined with conservatives and libertarians. Drawn together because raw milk is, by law, deliberately hard to get.
There's absolutely nobody in Washington that's going to save us. This is a grassroots movement.
Logan Duvall straddles those ideological lines as the farm-raised part owner of Me and McGee Farmers Market in North Little Rock. He wants to sell raw milk at his stand.
In order to get raw milk, the consumer has to go to that farm and purchase it directly from that site. So anything outside of that is technically going to be illegal.
Duvall offers other things that make the move from farm to table a short one. But when it comes to raw milk, that move's unavailable. It's why customers who learn of the Ballard's raw milk literally beat a path to their door.
We have very dear customers that drive 81 miles one way to pick up milk. Their landed cost, their full expense is $21 a gallon. Now they can buy milk at the store for what, $4 or $5 a gallon. Mm-hmm. They choose to spend $21 a gallon, their full in cost, on our milk because it feeds their family, it's nutrient dense. I don't think they should have to drive 81 miles.
But for Dr. Jennifer Acuff, a food safety expert, that long drive is vital.
Raw dairy products, when they are consumed, are often associated with illnesses like campylobacteriosis, listeriosis, and historically it was associated with even more dramatic diseases, dysentery, diphtheria, tuberculosis, brucellosis.
Acuff has a PhD in food microbiology and has been all around the world, seeing what all those bacteria can do to a person infected by their food. She says that long drive forces the potential raw milk consumer to see firsthand where it comes from. And a farm is not a clean place. And while that desire to close the separation between the farm and our dinner table is enticing, actually seeing the dirt and the dung should turn many off. And to Acuff, that's a good thing.
A consumer going to the operation, to the farm, and seeing the hygiene, seeing where that milk is produced. Even if they don't see any bacteria, that product is still risky.
Acuff says raw milk has cycled in and out of fashion before, but this time she's worried. The nominee to lead the Federal Health and Human Services Agency, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is a raw milk advocate. And part of why RFK Jr. has emerged as a leading voice is a function of the distrust of public health science after the pandemic.
They've said to themselves, after COVID or after the last several years of being told certain things, and the research that they personally do, come to the conclusion that, yeah, I'm going to go buy raw milk.
That spirit is behind the renewed effort to change the raw milk law in Arkansas. State Senator Alan Clark is one of those conservatives questioning the science behind it.
The opponents try to make it look like, and I think they mean well, that we're country hicks from Arkansas and we don't understand science, etc. And if we legalize selling unpasteurized milk at retail, we'll join other HIC states like California, Washington, Arizona, and Massachusetts.
HB 1048 takes the current law and takes out the farm-only requirement. Sellers will still have to give a contact number, and the jug still needs a warning label. Senator Clark is the co-sponsor with State Rep Cameron Cooper of White County. Clark says the bill is about freedom and relays a family story about cousins who say raw milk cured their lactose intolerance.
The only milk they could drink was raw milk, and she said, "Alan, I shouldn't have had to buy a cow." And I'm like, I'm picturing my cousin, refined lady, milking a cow, but she's right. You shouldn't have to buy a cow.
Listen, this is work. You know, make no mistake about it.
No one we spoke with disputes the risk of drinking non-pasteurized milk. The Ballards insist they're not looking to get rich selling what their 4 cows give them. At $12 a gallon, they still barely make any money on it. They think the price and the hype will safely inform future customers at places like me and McGee. Dr. Acuff stridently disagrees.
Saying that this is a way to promote the local dairy industry is going to come at the cost of lives. People die every year, children, frequently.
We've been blessed. We've been afforded the opportunity to do this. And so, by extension, if it brings abundance to us and we can share that with the community, then that's what we want to do.
HB 1048 is on the House Agriculture Committee's agenda this Wednesday. We'll bring you updates if the bill makes progress. In researching this story, surprisingly, both Dr. Acuff and Senator Clark refer to the same set of data from the FDA to prove their point. We've got links to that information in the digital version of this story on THV11.com. You can draw your own conclusions from it. But keep in mind, the amount of pasteurized milk consumption far surpasses raw milk in this country. And Dr. Acuff says that can skew the data considerably.
You need to see this if you suffer from a pinched nerve in the neck.
When you sit at your desk or use your phone, your head protrudes forward. And
Okay, welcome to Investigate Everything. This is a special... Wait, I'm a little thirsty. Hold on. Oh, that's so good. Somehow I'm not dying and I'm twitching. As a matter of fact, I've been drinking raw milk for quite some time now. We get this right down the street. Delicious. You gotta try it. I can't help but think when I see that news... that news article that we just watched. They sound just like the people. It's almost the same messaging as getting the vaccine, the COVID vaccine. And so when I see that, you know, like the end where the guy's like, and I just want to state that more people drink pasteurized milk than any, you know, yeah, well, more people are crammed into dirty cities where there's food pyramids and all they could get is crappy, you know, really crappy milk. I mean, there's milk now. I forgot the warning label they have on it, but it's not even a warning label. It's like, hey, you know, this mutated milk is the same as other milk. And maybe Liz, our guest, can talk about that. So why are we talking about milk and food security on Investigate Everything? Well, the reason we are is because my concept for this show and the type of content I have on this is you have to investigate everything that can come at you from our enemies abroad and domestic. And many of our enemies, especially like the Chinese Communist Party, they start at a very small level. They work their way out. They start with targeting the human, targeting spirituality, targeting your beliefs, targeting your family structure, targeting your homes, targeting your land, and then eventually targeting your country. That's how they roll. And I would even say the enemies that we've discovered or have reappeared or really been amplified during the pandemic do the same thing. They want to control everything. It's my belief that all the attacks on us for the last 20 to 50 years have been from, you know, Marxists and, you know, with puppet strings pulled by outright communists. Okay, so I think we've discovered a lot during the pandemic, especially, and that's all the things we believed from our FDA and from our the sociopathic overlords, you know, at the top levels of government, ours and others. They're lying in a lot of cases. So when you take raw milk, for example. Naomi and I started drinking raw milk religiously probably a year ago, and we're healthier for it. We started taking supplements that come from, buffalo organs and natural sources, where we even know what the casing is made of, and we're better for it. Getting outside, enjoying the sun, getting lots of vitamin D, all the things that they said during the pandemic were bad for you. Remember, stay inside and stay alive. It's stay inside, you'll probably die lonely. So anyways, I don't really have a good monologue open. I'm going to leave that to our guest. Her bio is in the description, but this is Liz Reitzig. Her Substack is Raw Milk Mama, and apparently there are other raw milk mamas. This is a thing, and great person. We were fortunate enough to have her at our house last weekend after a food freedom conference up in northern New York. So she was our house guest for a while, and we had a great time, and we learned so much, not only about raw milk, but also about like plants in our backyard that literally cured a nasty bug bite I had for days. I'll let her tell you about that if we have time. She's like, oh, take this and chew it up and rub it on that. And that bug bite was gone in like an hour. So the point of all that is all this stuff that God has given us, the less we mess with it, the better off we are and the more effective it is. Because it seems like everything that our governments mess with just make us sicker. And then suddenly there's a cure that only they can provide you, which also makes you sicker. It's kind of like a Microsoft subscription cycle where you buy the programming, you got to put a bunch of patches in it, then you got to renew it every year. Kind of sounds like a certain vaccine, doesn't it? So anyways, without much further yammering on from me, let me bring our guest. I'm going to let her tell you all about herself rather than me reading it from her bio, which I'm happy to do. But here we go. This is Liz Reitzig, and let me get her there. Right screen. There we go. Hey, Liz, welcome.
Hey, Brian, thank you. That was a great monologue. Great intro.
Oh, thanks. It's hot here, and the dog had a bunch of ticks, so I was rushing around in the last minute, and I was trying to shut off the screen while I was balancing this massive jar of raw milk, so I couldn't get it to stop off. So, Liz, tell us about yourself. You're a food security advocate. You're also apparently incredible natural healer, whether you'd call yourself that or not. And you also write a really great Substack. So tell us about yourself, how you got into your activism, and go ahead.
Well, first of all, thank you, Brian, and thanks for having me on. It's fun, super fun to have these conversations. I love the title of your podcast because I also believe that it's our responsibility, right? Looking after our own selves is our responsibility. A little bit of background. I was a very young mom. I had my first child at 21, and I didn't know a lot at the time. And so when my baby was constantly ill, I'm struggling. What do I do? And a few people came to me and started saying like, oh, maybe raw milk is the answer. And, I'm like a deer in headlights. I'm like, what do you mean? Right. And I really, at the time, I had this thought that crossed my mind more than once of like, well, it's probably pasteurized for a reason. And then I started investigating. And I learned that whole history of, why is it considered normal now that we pasteurize it? What happened? I understood all of that. And immediately, once I understood, I'm like, oh yeah, we're going raw. So I raised all 5 of my children on raw milk, had it through 3.5 pregnancies.
Liz, what were some of the things that you were scared of raw milk, and then what were some of the things that you discovered? Sorry to interrupt you, but I just don't want to lose that train.
Well, yeah, I mean, should we just dive into the history of it right now?
Well, no, finish your bio, of course. People, apparently you have a lot of fans, by the way, people popping up all over the chat, so that's awesome.
Oh, wow, wonderful. Well, thank you, and hello, everyone. The question was, what was I afraid of? So the messaging around it, the government messaging around it is, of course, raw milk is dangerous. And at the time, I think there was somebody, John Sheehan was head of the raw milk division at FDA, and he had a saying that said, drinking raw milk is like playing Russian roulette with your health. And once I began to peel back the layers, Brian, everybody has their moment. And for me, it was the health of my children. That is the most important thing to a mother. And once you realize the government's lying to me about milk, there's no going back. Right?
Good point.
Digging. You just keep digging.
Yeah.
And it would have been a totally different mindset if there'd been an opinion, right? If they're like, hey, our opinion is like, here are the risks, do what you want. That would have been totally different. But the fact was that it's dogmatic from the government, and they were conducting farm raids on raw milk farmers. So all of this just pushed me into action that I had no idea it was going to be a part of my life at that young age, but it just pushed me into it. So I got very involved in legislation and advocacy efforts, both on different state levels and on the national level. I participated in several, shall we say, well, I planned and participated in several non-compliance events, including transporting raw milk across state lines for Milk and Cookies rally at the headquarters of the FDA. I milked a cow on the lawn of the Capitol. That was
God, you guys are like the dairy Al Capones.
Well, actually, we can get into that, but no, more like the dairy Rosa Parks.
Okay, fair enough. I was just, I was trying to make it a little edgier, but go ahead.
Well, Al Capone was not such a great guy in my...
No, he wasn't. Okay, now you're making me feel bad.
Oh, don't. But, it's about character too.
Gotcha. Go ahead.
So the history of it, that's in a nutshell. That's who I am, why I'm doing this.
And so you were talking about some of the arrests. I wanted to talk about that. But before we do, let's talk about that video I just played. Okay, so some things that popped out at me is messaging. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of the messaging. We had a lot of discussions about propaganda and covert influence. And did you catch the messaging in there about how they said, health experts and health advocates from the left and nice people. Oh, yeah, and conservatives who like raw milk. And then he also was like disgusted at, they kept saying how dirty the farm is and everything. And it's sure there's dirty farms, but first of all, anyone who's been to New York City or Baltimore, I'll take a farm over those cities any day of the week. But also, it sounds like he's never been on a farm before because it's a farm. It smells like a farm. It's good. These are all good smells if in the right context. What do you think of some of his comments? He seems like a moron, but what are your thoughts on that? And it seems like they're almost trying to vilify not only the raw milk, but the entire ecosystem around it, including the farming industry.
Well, clearly that anchor did not investigate everything.
Thanks. She's on contract. She has to say that 15 times in an episode.
No,
I'm
but
just
I
kidding.
might say ideology 15 times. We'll see.
Yeah. But what do you think of, do you think this guy's just a jerk, or is that like the messaging that they're trying to do? Have you seen that kind of messaging before, I guess is a better question.
Absolutely. And Brian, you're probing just in the right direction. We've got to get into just this brief history of how did we get here? Because I think once we understand that the 200-year history of it, it'll make total sense why these people are talking about it in that way. And I've actually
the history of the attacks on raw milk, is that
essentially that's what it boils down to.
Gotcha.
Yes.
We'll take it away.
It's the history of the ideology.
Okay.
Why do we think it's dangerous? Why do some people think it's dangerous? So it starts really after the Revolutionary War. It was Hamilton, I believe, who said, well, we need to pay for this war. And he proposed a tax on whiskey imports. And if there's anything Americans don't like, it's being taxed. So American farmers said, who needs imports? We can make our whiskey. And they did successfully. And there was a bit of a transportation issue, right? Because if you think about it, all that whiskey has to get made at the farm and then transported into the cities, or get into the distilleries in the cities and then the waste has to get transported out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what was happening. And some brilliant minds, and I say that facetiously, decided, well, let's fix this waste problem of all this spent distillery grain, and let's put our dairy cows right next to the distilleries so we don't have to get rid of the waste. We'll just feed it to the cows. Huge mistake. Huge mistake. But they did this. And if you can imagine, here are concrete buildings. The cows are staying on these concrete slabs their whole miserable lives. They're sick. They're in their own dung. It's in the cities next to the distilleries. They're getting fed waste from the distilleries. There was only open milking systems, hand milking into buckets, essentially. And at that time, we're now talking mid to late 1800s.
Okay.
There was TB, especially in the inner cities. There was not proper sanitation. And in the two cities in focus, New York and Chicago, infant mortality rates were high. So what happened then was, okay, now if you read the article that I wrote about this history, you'll find this guy, Nathan Strauss, and he was essentially maybe not the wealthiest person in the world, but high up there. And he started a campaign for mandatory pasteurization. And he subsidized pasteurized milk from these distillery dairies to the depots in New York and Chicago. Meanwhile, at the same time, there was, shall we call them, a dissident group of doctors who formed something called the Medical Milk Commission. And these doctors volunteered their time, and they went out to the surrounding areas and certified farms as clean raw milk farms, because everybody agreed that proper nutrition from clean, safe raw milk was better for the kids. But they just said that the mandatory pasteurization was more efficient. So if you can understand, like, this is the mentality that started mandatory pasteurization. The first mandatory pasteurization laws began in Chicago in 1908 and snowballed from there. And believe it or not, Al Capone was involved in those mandatory.
Oh, boy, did I pick the wrong guy to compare you to.
He saw the writing on the wall, and he knew that he had to get into something that would stay lucrative. But we can talk more about that later.
And what does really quickly I don't really understand what pasteurization does. Could you explain that a little? Because I'm sure a lot of us nod our heads when we hear it, but we don't really know what it is.
Yes. When we're talking about milk, pasteurizing milk is legally when you take the milk up to 161 degrees and you leave it there for, depending on what type of pasteurization you're doing, you leave it there for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, something like that. So now we have, just to make things super confusing, ultra pasteurized milk. Okay. So pasteurization is heat treatment.
Okay.
And it is supposed to kill the potentially harmful bacteria that can be in raw milk, especially the kind of raw milk that was coming from those confinement swill dairies. Okay.
Right. Gotcha.
So now, Brian, I want to untangle a few things and separate them a little bit.
Okay.
And it's hard to keep up with all this. So
I'm actually writing notes while you're talking.
Okay. Well, this is why, you call yours Investigate Everything. I want to put like little topic points that people can look into more. So pasteurization in a nutshell, it's heat treatment to kill bacteria. But when we're looking at the modern milk industry, and I want to say everything from late 1800s to now, we have to separate that even more. And we have to say, what are we starting with? Because at this point in our culture, pasteurized milk has become synonymous with milk coming from predominantly big dairies where the cows are in confinement. They're getting fed soy and corn exclusively, not grass. And so if we can separate these two issues, it'll help make the whole conversation make more sense.
Okay. I'm listening. Go ahead.
Okay.
And by the way, when you see me like typing and stuff like that, I'm actually self-producing. So I'm listening, but I'm also popping things up on the screen for you. I'm actually putting in the URL for your Substack as we're speaking. So
Great.
don't think I'm being rude. You have to wait for me. Just keep rolling.
Okay, so if you go to the store, if anybody goes to the store today and they see pasteurized milk on the shelf, the majority chance is that it's coming from a big dairy where the cows have been fed soy and corn their whole lives, not grass. They're not grazing. Soy, corn, hay, canola oil. I mean, we're talking about cheap GMO product. That's their food. So that's a very different product than what we're getting when we go down the street to the local farm and get raw milk from animals that have been grazing their whole lives. They're taken care of on an intimate level, right? There's a small herd. It's a very different product. So I want to make sure that we're distinguishing between just pasteurizing versus how it's produced originally.
Okay.
And that's something that in those late 1800s, early 1900s, there was not a lot of differentiation on the industrial level. So back to a little bit more of the history, and you were talking about language as well. Actually,
and you saw some of that propaganda in your article, like the tainted milk being fed to the baby by the death himself. It's like the same. It's the same messaging they were using during the AIDS crisis in the 80s.
Well, it gets even better than that, Brian. So we have this time in history, late 1800s, early 1900s. Nathan Strauss was pushing for mandatory pasteurization. The Medical Milk Commission, they were saying, let's certify the clean raw milk farms and keep it coming into the cities.
Okay.
So those two worlds kind of coexisted for a little while. But then we get into the 1940s, and here we have, I brought a prop. This is May 1945. And
raw milk. Oh, let me take down your banner so they can see it. It says, raw milk can kill you.
Yes.
Why is she smiling?
Well, this is just the cover model. It has nothing to do with
Gotcha. Okay.
But this is a magazine geared towards women. All right.
Wow.
And then here's the article. I don't
What a
want to,
find. It's amazing that you found that. Wow. Look at that.
it's the title article. And we're talking about propaganda. We're talking about language. So this article, the byline is Lieutenant Commander Harold J. Harris from the U.S. Navy Reserve. Wow. And in it, he cites all about the town of Crossroads, America, and how there was an outbreak of undulant fever. We would know that as brucellosis, and how 25% of the patients died. Okay. 25% of the patients died.
All right.
From this outbreak in Crossroads, America.
How
And
big
he
was
goes
the outbreak?
on about how scary it is and how it can be lurking in your food and you don't even know it. And he all the distinguished servicemen that go overseas, they tell them not to have any raw milk because this one guy died from having goat cheese. I mean, it's scary stuff.
Oh my God. It literally sounds like COVID, like messaging.
Well, it's also 100% fabricated. There is no Crossroads America.
What?
There was no outbreak.
They just made it up.
They made it up and published it. And the close of the article is that raw milk is more dangerous than strychnine.
Than the poison strychnine. Isn't that rat poison?
He says, but to be on the safe side, beware of fresh milk at home or abroad. It can turn out to be a poison cocktail just as lethal as strychnine and 10 times more inviting.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Wow. They just made up a town. Wait, what was the name of the town again? It was Crossroads? You'll never find that, right? I mean, it's a million Crossroads.
It's literally made up, right?
Wow.
But it's made up to propagandize, especially the women, especially the mothers. And so that's 1945. And it got shared from that magazine. It got picked up by other magazines.
That wasn't that long ago.
Not long ago, right?
Wow.
But this is why now, like I'm now 2 generations removed from whoever, the women reading this, it's like my grandmother, that was her era. And so
Yeah, man.
that's part of how important this languaging is to make something normal to a culture. And so those who did not have firsthand experience with raw milk and know that that was complete, utter crap, it's harder to understand how much this is propaganda and how much of this is just made up just to change our patterns and our behaviors.
It's sick. I mean, it's sick. Now, let me ask you this. For me, where I go with this, there's who was profiting from this? Because that's usually the catalyst. I mean, it's been my experience that everything I investigate. Now, I've investigated very big corporations against other corporations, and murders, whatever. But there's always a money angle. If there's a prosecutor who's too aggressive on a suspect that may not have done it, someone's paying him, or he's been promised a job, or he doesn't want to go to his boss and say, "I wasted all your money." We know that the food pyramid, there was a lot of money coming in from the grain industry and those type of things. And then, of course, in more recent times, as we know, is Pfizer was paying almost 50% of the FDA's testing budget through, the fees they pay for testing. Who was making money on this?
So at first, it was the dairy farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so in 19, I think 23, maybe 21, they began something called the Pasteurized Milk Ordinance. And this was a set of rules to guide the dairy industry. And so, Brian, I don't even think the most evil genius of that time could imagine how centralized our dairy industry would become.
Wow.
But I think it was in part motivated by greed. And
Yeah.
if they could control that dairy market, I mean, think about it. But, I'm kind of tumbling over my ideas here because they're all coming out so fast.
No, that's okay. Welcome to my world. Go ahead.
So the dairy industry, through this Pasteurized Milk Ordinance, which is about a 500-page piece of, it's not even technically, I mean, it's regulation and industry government collaboration, right? But what it does is it governs every drop of milk in America.
Oh my God.
And so they began this consolidation of the dairy industry, essentially. So what happens now?
And they would be the dairy farmers or the government?
Yeah, it was both. It was a combination,
All right.
cooperation. And so what it is it's consolidation of the farms, and they set the prices, the processors. Okay, this is key.
Mm-hmm.
When you're trying to understand the world of raw milk and what's going on legally, an important thing to understand is that the processors set the dairy prices that they pay the farmers. The farmers do not set those prices.
And what do the processors do? What is their job in this, the production of milk?
They are the ones that pick up the milk at the farms in the big milk trucks. They take it to the big processing plant where it gets homogenized and pasteurized and turned into the various products, and they market it. So if you're a farmer and all you want to do is farm, you don't want to market your milk, then yay, here comes a co-op, and they're offering to do all of that side of it, the people side of it that the farmer doesn't want to do. Oh, great. Okay.
And the farmer never used to have to do.
Well, it started out, I'm going to say it started out with potentially some good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
It's not there anymore. So now the processors are setting the prices, which are unsustainable, like in every sense of the word, unsustainable. Since the 1970s, we've lost 95% of our dairies.
Holy moly. Wow. Wow. I did not. Wow. That is terrifying. Talk about a food security issue.
Exactly.
Huh.
So when an individual farmer says, I'm going to sell my milk directly and set my own prices, of course, the dairy industry does not want to see that happen.
Right. Right. I mean, God forbid, because they're going to lose all the money, they're going to lose all those fees. And it seems to me that in this type of system, I mean, do the processors like snitch out farms that they don't really want in the industry?
There are some rules where a farmer will have to sign a contract saying they're not going to sell raw.
Right.
But I think it's actually more organic than that, so to speak. If you're a processor and your business is in collecting a lot of milk and taking it to the processing plant, what's been happening, Brian, the thing that's cost a lot of dairy farmers their businesses is because of this consolidation, small dairies are getting left behind. So if you're milking 30 cows, even 100 cows, and you're maybe just a little bit too far off the route, the co-op will, the farmers call it getting a letter. The co-op will send a letter saying, we're done with you. And then what does that farmer do? Well, that farmer, a lot of them just sell. They sell to a local neighbor. They get rid of their cows. And so this is part of the push on the dairy industry, that we have big dairies that keep getting bigger, and our small local dairies are just getting obliterated.
Right. And now, isn't it those big dairies that are also kind of messing around with the genetics of their cows as well? So your milk really doesn't have a chance at ever being really healthy or pure?
Yes, that's not my biggest concern, though.
Okay.
I don't like it, but it's really not, because if our ideology shifts to supporting small local farms, I mean, that will just be one of the things that falls away.
Okay, well, that makes sense. That makes total sense. But I guess where I'm concerned, I'll have to pull up. I just, I was in what I've noticed is like Hood, the big dairy milk producer. They've got all sorts of ingredients on their milk that I don't recognize. And then I saw one the other day. This was in Aldi, and Aldi's kind of a lower price type of. I like to go there because they have giant mixed nuts for like no money. But I was looking for milk, and this is before our event, so I was thinking about milk a lot. And if I'm in a hurry, I'll just grab up some milk and just roll the dice. But I saw something, and I forgot what and I'll pull it up by the end of the show. But it said something about like how this type of process or thing that they did to the cow doesn't change the nature of the milk or something. It was just really creepy to me, and I'll find it on my phone because I just took a picture of it. And do you know what I'm talking about?
Maybe. I think
right.
It's the
hormone. Let me pull it up while you're talking.
They've been injecting into the cows, the RBGH.
That's the impression. Yes, that's what they said. Yeah, it was something like that.
Yes. Yeah,
And,
I mean, terrible. It's so not part of God's plan for us and the earth, right? And it's there so that the animals produce more milk, because in the dairy industry, the name of the game is volume.
I don't even want to know how they get an animal to produce more milk. So how? Okay, go ahead.
It's volume.
I'm just glad I'm drinking raw milk as you're talking.
Well, some of it's. Well, let me get a little nerdy here about cow breeds.
Okay.
So the Holstein cow, the modern Holstein, this is the typical black and white dairy cow. It's a large animal.
Right.
It's a large cow. And she's been bred over many thousands of years for a specific type of milk, and recently for higher volume. And I don't want to vilify that at all, because each of the breeds has a specialty. So the Holsteins come from a line of cows bred for a higher protein and higher volume.
Right. Okay.
Versus something like the Jersey cow, which Jerseys are very well known for their higher fat content.
Okay.
All right. And so the different breeds, with each of them, their specialty, but we have commodified just the Holstein.
Okay. Got it.
And continued to breed for higher volume. And this circles right back around to that issue I just talked about, which is The farms need to produce volume in order to stay in business as a conventional pasteurized dairy farm.
Yep.
It's all about volume.
Well, I mean, I have no problem with the breeding. I know the beef industry fairly well. You know, my daughter was raised in it, and then I worked out west with the big Native American company. They had like 4,000 head. I get that, but to actually manipulate the genetic structure of a cow to produce more milk, it creeps me out, because how do we know that mutation is not active when it goes into your body when you drink that glass of milk and does something to you that no one could have foreseen?
Well, are you talking about the hormone that's added, the RBGH?
Yeah.
I believe that's a hormone, right? So it'd be like it's pumping us full of steroids to be more productive in something.
I mean, who knows with these people?
Right.
Like they lie all the time, and they lied about Crossroads America. I mean, we saw what they did with the vaccine, quote unquote, or the entire pandemic. I mean, they just constantly lie. Who knows what they're putting in there? I mean, is in your activism, are people looking into, okay, so I'll put it this way. I was in the government for a long time, and sometimes you were forced to say what you were working on. And I'm happy to say I'm working on anything too bad or that was illegal. But I will say this. They will say as little as possible, or they'll give you something that they'll give the public something that sounds bad and bad enough to make them, to quench their thirst for information. But they won't tell them all the other things that are bad. Have you come across in your activism and your work where the government themselves are lying about what has been going into dairy products that are, from the bigger farms that they approve, or even the pasteurization process or any of that? Have you come across any of that? Much in the way like Naomi Wolf and that the War Room team found all those things wrong with the vaccine. When those things are reported out again, they'll take a couple and say, "Oh, this is," but we solved that, or not, which they didn't. Have you seen that in the dairy industry? They give you just a little so that people feel like they're sharing, but they're not really.
It's a little bit different, Brian. So they're damn proud of the way they've created feeds that make the cows produce more, and they're damn proud of their pasteurization processes. Yeah. What, if anything, what they're hiding, or what's the next layer of that is the bigger issue, the centralization of the dairy industry. And that actually includes the fringe raw milk industry too, through the black markets. So if you really want to peel those layers back, look at how consolidated it's become. And this is in your wheelhouse, because we're talking about food security. Can you have people who have food security if one of the primary sources of easy calories, dairy, is so far away from the people who need it?
Right. No. You're right. Yeah. That definitely puts a strain on food security.
And to me, that's the big lie that's hiding in plain sight. There's plenty of milk in this country, but where is it?
Yeah, good question.
Where is it, right? And I mean, pick your what if. How does it get to you?
Freight.
I mean, pick your what if. The freight goes down, the infrastructure.
Oh yeah, of course.
The electric grid goes down.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly. How does it get to you? You're right. I mean, better food security would not have everything centralized. I mean, I mean, look, it's also the reason why, not to go too far afield here, but you know what I look at, and that's always, how I would, if I were the Chinese Communist Party, take apart this country and defeat it. And we're hard to attack because we're 50 little countries with 50 different cultures, and governors that have more power than any other country in the world with their own little armies. So the key is to get that centralized so you can conquer one thing. But if we have our food supply centralized, like you're saying, especially dairy, it's not that hard to really bring this country to its knees, right?
Well, that's what I keep saying.
So wait, all right, just so we can make sure we're on the same page here. So so the big dairy co-op or whatever, that the industry giant is a centralized system, and then it goes out. So if you take out that centralized system, like that's pretty much it, unless you have a raw milk producer near you.
Well, I'm not sure I totally understand that question, but I think so.
Meaning, what is the current structure of our dairy distribution? Is there a central, like, are most of the big dairy producers kind of centralized?
Yes, in a nutshell. So
Okay.
you have the dairy farms that are getting bigger and bigger since the 1970s, more and more cows per farm, producing more and more milk per farm. And then they milk the cows every day, twice a day. It goes into the bulk tank. And then the milk truck comes by. So also, like, listen to this process. Like, it's
Yeah.
crazy. Then the milk truck comes by, sucks everything out of that milk tank,
Okay.
takes it to the processing plant, which, could be a few miles away or it could be a couple 100 miles away.
What? And it's milk. I mean, obviously it's refrigerated, but
Yes.
I can't feel that all of these little apparatus along all these links in the chain are all sterilized. It just sounds a little.
I mean, to some extent, this is why we pasteurize, right? And
Right. Yeah.
This is the kind of it's what the food safety people are focused on. If you just take raw milk out of any of those huge dairy bulk tanks, of course you're going to find stuff. Of course you are.
Oh, so wait a minute. So basically, if they're testing the raw milk after it goes to the central processing.
Yes.
That's idiotic.
In the bulk tanks mostly of each farm, but we're talking about farms with, several thousand cows to several tens of thousands. So
yeah, and plus it's like
process.
evidence. There's a chain of custody, right? Like
Yeah.
the more links in that chain of custody, the more tainted evidence can get in a crime. Just like with milk, the more chains there are in this process, the more likelihood it is of getting tainted with something that ironically may have come from the machinery that is owned by the people that are trying to make your milk safer or claim to be.
Correct. And so one of the lies that gets told over and over and over is they somehow pretend like pasteurized milk is harmless. And pasteurized milk has and does cause illnesses as well.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
I did not know that. What kind of illnesses?
Everything that they say that raw milk causes, any foodborne illness you can find in literally any
So they're
food.
projecting. Wait a
Well,
minute.
but think about it,
Wow.
Brian. I mean, that makes sense. Anytime you're putting food in your mouth, you're putting yourself at risk.
Right.
So I don't want to, I'm not picking on pasteurized milk. I'm just saying they're making an unfair comparison.
Pick on it, man, because honestly, like I saw Pasteur like all over, all these dangerous medications have been pouring into our market since 2020. And, by all means, slap them around. I don't care, because look, here's the thing. It's like anytime things get this big, things get stupid, things get, anytime there's a bureaucracy involved or it gets, nationalized, for lack of a better term, that's when things really start getting bad. And I personally, from a security standpoint, I like the idea of having, a town or a community that has so many farms around it where, people have choice, but they go to that farm or they go to that farm. That's good security because for any of our enemies, that's a lot of farms that got to take out. That's a lot of links in the chain that got to take out. It seems to be more common sense to me from a security standpoint.
Well, it absolutely is, which makes your hypotheses very interesting, right? But
Gotcha.
also, Brian, I want to emphasize something that I think gets lost in all of this.
Sure.
And that's that if we actually achieve something like that in our lifetimes of having small farms surrounding us, The thing is how you pasteurize milk is you heat it up to 160.
Okay.
So we can all do that in our homes.
Right.
Okay. And that's just not even mentioned. So if we can take that link of the big processor out and dairy farmers can set their own prices and sell directly to us, and those who want to can just cook it at home.
Wait, should I be cooking my raw milk when I buy it from the local farm?
I don't think so. I'm not part of that camp. But like, no, I'm not going to advocate for that. I'm just saying,
right?
That's like a piece that's missing from all the government and industry propaganda, because they don't want people to realize that you can actually go direct, get it directly, either drink it raw, or if you're afraid to, pasteurize it at home. Like they don't want us to have that kind of control over who we get it from, who the farmers sell it to, if there's not something participatory production, as I like to call it. They want to take that away from us.
Well, because look, I mean, everything goes back to being, if you're going to conquer this country, and like we talked about at my lunch table, the goal is 2049. Okay, the goal is 2049. No more United States. China's the global hegemon. Everything you're talking about this process sounds like Mao's China. Like they took out the local businesses, they took out everything, and you had to go to the commune, which is the state, to get anything. If you look at the way people are getting sick, right? All of a sudden they're like, oh, your seasonal vaccine. Naomi made a great point. She said, it sounds just like Microsoft's subscription type of process. Your annual resubscription. You get sick every year like clockwork at the same time, no matter where in the country you are. That's when flu season happens. And I look at this, there's also the central processing part scares me, because if you look at, first of all, them testing it at the processing center is bonkers. That's got to be stopped. But the other thing is, they've talked about putting things in our food supply to get mRNA, for instance, into people. If government-controlled milk processing is happening there, what's to stop them from, dumping some of that death serum into the milk, or tainting the milk on purpose so that way someone like Bill Gates can sell their fake, God knows, urine-based baby formula. I mean, there's just so many things that could go wrong, because let's face the facts. People in the government, they don't make a lot of money. It's not that hard to pay them off. And I know this because that's how spies are born. You go and you find someone who's keeps updating their LinkedIn profile, so they're looking for a job, and no one listens to them, and you recruit them. They don't know what they're doing. You say, hey man, it'd be really great. Can I come hang out at the dairy farm while you're there? You see what I mean? So like, this is a dangerous thing. If I were our enemies, I'd be focused on this. I'd be like, we're getting in there.
The thought has crossed my mind as well.
Sorry to get all excited about this, but this is, you somehow segued this into my world, man.
There's so much overlap. And Brian, I wrote an article a couple months ago about the parallels between China right before the Great Chinese Famine and America today. So we're not far off. We're not. And that's why, I just keep beating the drum for hyper-local food security and food systems, and getting out to the dairy farms.
Yeah, and how about leaving them alone and not arresting them? Like, you see all those, I know you did, you wrote about it. What were they, they're arresting Amish farmers and everything? What was going on there?
Well, there's a lot. That's a lot to untangle. So I'm glad you asked.
In a nutshell, if you don't mind. And I know you have if your name is Raw Milk Mama on your Substack, you probably have kids. So when you have to go, just let me know. I don't ever have heart stops. I roll.
Start falling asleep. That's probably when we'll need to wind up.
Okay.
No, essentially, all the corruption that you see in the bigger dairy industry, the government, you can see that in some of the raw milk farmers as well. So I want to peel back some of these layers and say that in the early 2000s, there was some overly aggressive government force against some small farms. but that's not what we're seeing now.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been a few headlines on some very specific farms that just did not portray the whole situation very
Mm-hmm.
well. And it's using, like, people like us who care about these things. Some of those headlines have been used against us, Brian. And propaganda, how that works. So a lot of people kind of got fooled into believing a certain thing without.
Give me an example, just so I know where. Because the headlines, in my opinion, made the government look bad for, anytime you arrest Amish, you look bad. There's no good way to look good at arresting Amish people. And I know they're not all good. I know I've investigated the Amish. I've had, I've had investigations where I had to go find people who were being, protected and hidden by Amish gangs. It's I get it. But what are examples of the headlines you're talking about?
Well, some of the Amos Miller stuff, right? That was the one that got a lot of attention a couple of years ago.
Okay, can you give a little context on Amos Miller?
Yes, he's an Amish farmer in Pennsylvania. And what happened was the facts of the case. Now there is a court case currently going on about him. And the facts of the case are that there were 3 illnesses connected with his milk in children.
Okay. 3 illnesses.
Okay. Yeah, the PDA, which is Pennsylvania Department of Ag.
Right.
They began an investigation. And that's what got publicity, is their investigation against him. There was no arrest. There was no criminal charges, nothing. But
that's typical.
You investigate everything. So this is something.
No, but it's a typical
I was
trick.
Very close to and very familiar with. And unfortunately, some of the conservative media who also purport to invest things did not fully investigate it.
No.
Probably did not look at the court documents, but there is corruption in the raw milk industry as well. And there's a thriving black market.
Yes, the bad raw milk. We talked about this. Let's jump into that really quickly, because that's important, because a lot of people are going to watch us, a lot of people read you, and they're going to see a sign for raw milk and say, boom, raw milk, we're good. We're going to be healthy Americans again. Give us some, let's talk about the bad raw milk and the black market. And then after that, definitely before we end, hopefully you'll share with us how to find good raw milk.
Absolutely. Yes. So what I want to keep coming back to is hyperlocal. Okay. So if you're getting milk shipped from 3,000 miles away or 500 miles away, if it's getting shipped to your door and you're not going to the farm, or you don't have an opportunity to go to the farm and actually see what's going on, then something's a little fishy to begin with.
Right.
Okay. I'll start there. Then the PMAs have become popularized in the fringe.
What's a PMA?
It stands for Private Membership Association.
Okay.
And they don't work. They get advertised as this way to bypass government regulations.
So these are for consumers.
The private membership associations are
like, who would join one?
Well, the farmers have, they set it up, and then everybody who gets from them has to sign this contract. But what it says, some of them frequently, what they say is that if we are now in a contract between each other, and therefore none of the government laws or regulations apply to us.
Well, that seems like a bad idea. Put your name on that list. Good Lord.
Have you not heard of these before? The private membership
No,
associations?
never heard of them. This is, well, that's why I wanted you on, because this is an area I know little about. It's I found it fascinating when all you guys were talking this past weekend at that event. There's just so much going on. It's such a central thing to our food supply, our own personal health security. So no, I don't. Go ahead.
Well, when you start digging into private membership associations, you're going to meet a whole world of crazy. So a lot of these farms buy into this, and they pay whatever amount. The people who are writing these private membership associations, they pay vast amounts of money to this. And then for people to become members of the private membership association, they have to pay into it as well. And Brian,
Wow.
it's a big scam. It doesn't work.
It sounds like a mafia type deal.
I think you just hit the nail on the head.
You like, what happens if you don't join and all the other farms around you do join?
It's individual. It's farm by farm.
Okay. But it's like, I don't know, man. It just seems like if everyone else, let's say everyone's joining it and you don't, what happens? Like, you don't get any business or worse?
It's not cut and dry like that. There are farms that are following. So let's take Pennsylvania as a microcosm. You have both the farmers who adhere to the Pennsylvania state regulations, and then you have this thriving black market of those who purport to go by the PMAs and ship milk everywhere and don't test and aggregate. I mean, this is part of the issue, is that the farmers who are using these PMAs are shady to begin with.
It doesn't sound like a good idea. Like, I mean, let me move you forward a little bit here, because I don't want it to get too late. But how do you avoid these? Because that sounds, honestly, look, that sounds as terrifying to me as all these metal trucks moving dairy and calling it safer. The PMA thing, the kind of black market, organized black market, it sounds like. That's terrifying to me. I mean, because if they're not testing, they're probably not, testing this cleanliness of the shipping apparatus, or, who knows? I mean, so how do you find good raw milk? And I'm a little concerned too, because I did go and find some raw milk, but we didn't really check it out. We just said, hey, raw milk, let's go.
Yeah, cool. Well, first of all, not all farms are shady, but do be on the lookout. And I'll provide some questions and some criteria to evaluate.
Oh, good.
There's everything on the spectrum, and most of the farms are great. But one of the things that I think is super, super important is developing a relationship with the producer.
Okay.
And being able to ask the questions.
And the producer, so people know, is the farmer, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. What do you test for? And if you ask these open-ended questions, you're going to start a conversation. You're going to start a dialogue. What are you testing for? How often do you test? Are you following the state regs? And that's not to say, I mean, I don't want to get labeled here, right? It's not to say that like all the state regs are perfect. It just gives you an idea where they are, right? Ask to go out and see the farm. Ask to see the cows, ask to watch the milking process. I mean, keep in mind that this is somebody's business and their home. So you might not always get a yes to those questions. But then there are a few things within the milk itself that are really big clues. Clean raw milk tastes great. And a lot of people come to me and they say, oh, I got some raw milk and it tastes weird. Don't get it. Like,
yikes.
Stop.
Okay.
Clean raw milk tastes great. It tastes fresh. And if you're keeping it at 35 to 37 degrees, it's going to last 2 to 3 weeks in your fridge.
That's why I noticed it lasts a lot longer than regular milk or pasteurized milk.
Clean milk will.
What color should it be? Like, okay. This is, I don't know if you can see with the lights here. Let me turn those up. But this is the raw milk. And then this is the weird bleached white. I put regular milk in one of the jars. So you see, I don't know if you can see the difference here. There we go.
I can see the difference. Yeah.
Yeah. This seems unnaturally white. This is Hood.
So, so you are with raw milk. Here's a couple of things to keep in mind. Where do we start? Okay, let's go back to that, the processing of milk.
Okay.
When all of that milk from tens of thousands of cows gets to the processing plant, it's all standardized. So they take the fat out, and then they put just the right amount of fat back in for what you're getting, 2%, low fat, whatever. So it's all standardized and homogenized. So it's always going to look the same. But when you're getting raw milk, Okay, there's another factor I want to mention here, which is what the cows are eating. Okay.
Okay.
From the conventional dairies, the cows are all eating a diet of corn, soy, some hay, sometimes canola oil, sometimes mash, different types of grains mashed up. So they're getting this varied diet of corn, soy, canola, little bit of grass in there, but it's not what cows generally eat. And it's always the same. So the milk
But don't you want them to eat grass? Like, isn't that better?
Yes, that is what cows are designed to eat.
Right.
So then you get the raw dairies, which are typically very small dairies, and the cows are out on grass. And as the seasons change, the amount of grass they're getting changes, and the types of grass they're getting changes. So right now we're in that spring-summer milk season where the grass is growing rapidly. They're getting a diversity of grasses, and the milk fat has more of the beta carotenes in it, which turns it a little bit of that cream color that you're going to see. You're also getting unprocessed milk. So that fat you're going to see rises to the top, and it's going to be distinctive. And it's going to have its own color. So this is a good thing. It means it's the cows are getting grass, the fat is there, and it's not standardized. It's not just all the same.
Right. So and so is that what homogenized means? Is just standardizing it?
Yes, it's a process with high pressure where the fat molecules of the milk, cow milk, get blown up into little teeny tiny fragments of what they're supposed to be so that they stay suspended in the milk. They don't rise.
So because I remember growing up with non-homogenized milk, you have that cream at the top. And when I see it in the store, if I can't find raw milk, I'll at least get some because it just tastes better.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the milk like whole milk that I get, that's not, put through the Satan process or whatever it is, like just the good old raw milk that's non-homogenized. Honestly, it tastes creamy. Like, and there's one label that I really like. It said the way milk used to taste, and it's just such a difference. It's almost like you're drinking, light cream rather than like milk. Because after drinking raw milk at that very nice farm we were at for the event. And there's this, I love that too. I mean, what a dream for the raw milk, any raw milk person. There were jars of raw milk everywhere. You just grab one and go. And I had to buy some milk on the way home for my morning shake, and it was just like this hood crap. And you see I still have a lot of it. Honestly, it tastes like flavored water. It's like cream flavored water to me now that I've just been, drinking so much raw milk.
And to think that so many people in our generation, Brian, we grew up on the homogenized pasteurized milk, and so we didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And like when I first switched to raw milk, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so creamy, so good. Right?
So good. Yeah, so good.
Where I live, there's a large legal immigrant population. And when I talk to people who did not grow up in America, they frequently grew up on raw milk. And so when I give them some, they look at me and they smile and they're like, oh, it tastes like home.
Oh, wow. That's a beautiful line. That is a beautiful line. I mean, I'm sure a lot of them come here and they're like, why'd I come here? Like if they're, I mean, granted, there's a lot of crappy places in the world, and I think America's the best place on earth. But, we have our moments. But the thing is, like, that must be so beyond disappointing, like tragic to get here and you can't find raw milk. You can't find, half the things you're used to getting. Because I know what you're saying. Like, I've been to, as you know, many, many countries. And you just get raw ingredients at places, from the lard to the milk to everything. And I've never, in all the third world countries I've been to, I've never gotten sick, ever.
I mean, that's a pretty big endorsement.
No, it's true. I mean, Thailand down to South America, Philippines down to the southern provinces, you name it. Never gotten sick from anything. And I was, you don't know what you're eating. You're like, some of these places have like the Thai places. They have like the chicken on display in a glass case in the middle of the summer all day long. And but I never really got sick, And I also, when I eat locally, I never get bitten by bugs.
Wow.
It's only when I ate I was watching the soldiers like in Thailand, right? And they would, there were a lot of soldiers that are scared to like eat local food, and I would dive into it because what one guy had told me, one Thai soldier, he said, I said, how do you guys not get bitten by mosquitoes? Because it's like mosquito heaven over there. It's the food, because they got the garlic and they've got the hot sauce, and so I just started pounding that, and I was right as rain. And all the people eating the very highly processed meals ready to eat, which are packed with garbage, they were just getting devoured. I mean, it must have been like a holiday for the mosquitoes. Like, woo, we got a whole new flavor palette going on here. It's called American. So yeah. Anyways, I went off course there, but there's got to be something to that, and. Do you? Okay, well, let me switch gears here. Do you see hope for your vision of these non-centralized, more localized type distribution points for like raw milk and healthier products? And do you see that is there a rise in popularity? Because what struck me about that news article that we played at the beginning is it used to be the left that was all into this stuff, not the right. Like, it was always the left going 80 miles out of their way to get like that fresh whatever, or organic or grass-fed. And now all of a sudden that's a bad thing on the left. Like, it's just weird. Like, that was their deal, not our deal. And so do you see hope in that? Because let's face the facts. The left, for lack of a better term, because it involves Republicans in there too, or just morons, but it's like they have a lot of power when it comes to the messaging. They own a lot of the media. There's a lot of diehards that still think 60 Minutes is real news. Do you see any hope for a rise in this and maybe the kind of bringing down the power of these big centralized operations?
Well, if there's anything I know from being in this world for 22 years, it's that nothing can bring us together and heal us like sharing food around a table. Some days I'm hopeful, Brian. Some days I'm in despair. But I do think it is conversations like this. I think it's people awakening to these, they're not new ideas, right? These are old ideas, and they're everywhere in the world, but reawakening to it and shifting our own ideological capture. And it's one at a time, right? But it's also in community, and it's also around the table together that we can do this, and having conversations and being open to new ideas and staying curious and investigating everything, right? That is how we're going to shift the ideology of, I will call it the industrial food system, back to a hyper-local, secure food system.
I like it. Well, look, with people like you, Liz, we might get there. And I like even better than investigate everything is staying curious. That's the key thing. And I think they're linked. Like, if you're eating unhealthy food, you're not really thinking on all your cylinders. You're not energized. And you need energy to be curious. So I think they're all linked. So I'd encourage people to, safely get raw milk and raw products as much as you can. We met that gentleman who had severe Crohn's disease, apparently was dying. And he, according to him, he went on this all raw type regimen of everything. And he's cured. He's a very healthy guy, which is amazing to me. And it makes sense because it's like, not to get graphic here, but the miracles of like breast milk, for instance, you've heard those stories. Obviously that's raw milk. But I've heard stories of women in Africa, squirting breast milk in their baby's eyes when a cobra like poisoned their eyes and stuff like that and curing them. So there's just, I don't know, I just feel like God kind of equipped us on this planet with everything we need, and we shouldn't really mess with it too much. If it works, it works. Don't mess with it. And it seems like food's kind of one of those things. We don't need to do all this stuff to our food. It's better when it's from the earth and as close to the way God intended. Anyway, so look, we're gonna have to do a part 2, but what I do want to, if you can you tell us really quickly? Let me pull up your Substack again. There is a I saw some apps and stuff that had like raw milk finder and stuff like that. So this is your Nourishing Liberty website. Tell us a little bit about this, and then really tell us where people should go to find you, find your work, but also where you'd like them to start learning more about what you know so we can help grow this movement.
Okay, well, thanks, Brian. This part where I talk about myself.
By the way, I'm Irish, so cut me off every now and then if I ramble on. That's
no, I love it, but let's put like one thing I want to place mark real quick is that one of those pieces of curiosity that people always have is the food safety side of things. We've spent a lot of time on food security, which I think is super important, but people are curious about the food safety side of it. So we can address that next time or touch on that in a minute if you want.
So no, go ahead. I'm in no rush. I just I just need to make sure that my that I get the milk back in the fridge, and I don't want to keep you'd given me a time when your batteries start dying, so I didn't want to push you too far.
Oh, I'm good. I will let you know.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, just real quick on my website, I first of all, please, folks, check back in a couple of weeks. I just finished a book about raw milk and my adventures over the past 20 years. So that will be available very soon on my website, nourishingliberty.com. I go into what the heck happened with our food systems and how do we take them back. So yeah, sign up, get the emails, stay up to date on all of that. For small farms, I consult with them. Look, small farms get in trouble sometimes. They get on the wrong side of the regs. I work with farmers to get back on the right side of things. And the advocacy piece of it, advocacy on every level, state, federal, local, all of it. So, hey, if you're facing a challenge you don't know how to deal with, give me a call. So that's that in a nutshell. But if we want to talk about the food safety, because that was a big focus in the video that you sent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to point out on Nourishing Liberty for everyone, there's a guide here, a free guide that everyone should check out. I'm guessing that kind of goes into some of the things you were mentioning earlier about what to ask for.
Correct.
Yeah,
and
that's great.
You know, I wrote it because I was seeing, like in this small farm movement, I was still seeing some farms that would look me in the eye and tell me that, oh yeah, we're 100% grass fed. And they weren't. So this guide will help people understand what questions to ask, to really get the information that they want, and to be able to start peeling back those layers of like, what is going on with our food system and what should I be asking for to find out what it is the farm is doing, if that is a good match for what I'm looking for.
Gotcha. And there was one other point you wanted to touch on as well. Before we went.
The food safety?
Yeah.
So the video you showed at the beginning, Brian, and everything that was mentioned in this Coronet article, and a lot of the propaganda against raw milk is about food safety. And people are going to hear, like, depending on what you look at, you're going to hear that raw milk is either this horrible, dangerous food, or that it's so safe and it can never harm you. And both of those are not quite entirely accurate.
Right.
So raw milk, clean raw milk. And we talked a little bit earlier about how to tell if it's clean and what to ask the farm to find out what they're doing. Clean raw milk is a very safe food. I raised my babies on it. A lot of people give it to their babies. It's a clean, safe food. I cannot overemphasize that. But not all raw milk is the same, right? And that is the important thing as a consumer to keep in mind, that you have to be your own advocate on this.
Right.
And while certainly certain of our agencies tend to exaggerate and hyperbolize these things, those big, broad statements also cannot be trusted.
Mm-hmm.
So it is important to investigate. Now, you sent me an article for reference from the FDA.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yes. Let me pull that up.
And I want to make a distinction real quick between what they consider research and the millions of pieces of anecdotal and historical evidence we have to the contrary.
Mm-hmm.
So they say there's no difference between raw milk and pasteurized, but we know from millennia that people and humans have thrived. No nutritional difference, I should say. They're saying that there's food safety risk with raw milk, but we know that people have thrived for millennia on clean raw milk.
Mm-hmm.
We know from stories like the one you just mentioned. I can tell you, I know hundreds of people who switch from pasteurized to raw milk, and not only do they not get sick, they get better. They have seasonal allergies. Those are gone.
Wow.
They've been lactose intolerant. That's gone. They can do great on raw milk. So we have to start looking at and be really curious about all of these anecdotal stories that tell a very different story than what the FDA wants you to know.
Right.
And keeping in mind also that because of the state of industrial milk in our country, what we talked about earlier, the raw milk that they're most likely studying is raw milk from those confinement industrial dairies. They're
ridiculous.
not looking at the raw milk that you're getting from down the street or the raw milk that I get from the farmer in my community.
Right.
They're not studying that milk, the one that where the cows, it's a 30 cow herd or maybe a 4 cow herd, and they're all jerseys and they're on grass all the time and they're not getting various medical interventions. The cows aren't, right? So there are two types of raw milk in America, one that is destined for the pasteurization plant and one that is destined for our glasses. And those are two very different products.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. And it's, I mean, the more I look at this, it's just like the more, I mean, you see the pattern here. It's like cows produce methane, so they're bad for the environment. Get rid of all the cows. That tells me eventually they're trying to get rid of milk too and switch you over to some synthetic crap. And that's the scary part about it. So I think from my perspective and yours, that's another reason why it's important to protect small farms, because do we really want a guy that looks like Bill Gates or Anthony Fauci telling us what we're going to consume to be healthy? I mean, they look like shit. They have noodle arms, they have little man breasts, and they're just disgusting human beings. And I'm sorry, or like Peter Hotez, who was on Joe Rogan's show and claimed he jogs 5 miles a day, and Joe Rogan's like, you run? Like it was, but the point is, it's like the people telling us what's bad for us, they physically look like garbage. And I think that's this isn't being vain or anything. This is, that's, how healthy you are and, the color of your skin. These are indicators of your level of health. And, you are what you eat, literally. And so it's kind of like, it seems like all the people who've been telling us what's bad for us and what's going to make us healthy don't look very healthy. And all the people, what I love about your movement, everyone's like out in the sun all the time. Everyone's outside. Everyone looks vibrant. Everyone looks healthy. And that is the biggest indicator to me that, which side do you want to listen to about what you put in your body?
I mean, these are good points, right?
I feel like you're holding back. I'm going to have to get you on here. We're going to have to get you back here. We're going to have a few shots of raw milk, loosen everyone up. And, but no, because I can't wait to have our next offline conversation, because I'm really I'm so curious to like, for instance, I really want to dig into that lady that was being interviewed on that first article we played. And then when I look at like an FDA thing like this, first thing I do is I go right to the bottom and I see who the acknowledgments go to and who's funding it and what the conflict of interests are. I rarely read the article. I check that first. And 9 times out of 10, you will find people with a corporate overlap.
Absolutely. And when you look, okay, I want to tell a story, but I have to only tell a part of it. And you're going to it just has to be certain parts of it just have to remain confidential for now.
Okay.
There was there's a person I know, and this person had an experience with raw milk where his wife bought a cow and he started drinking raw milk.
Okay.
And the next season, his allergies were not there.
Okay.
And he got really, really, really curious about that, right? We're talking about curiosity. Just so happens that he was in a position to do some research. So he notified the appropriate agency that he wanted to study this piece of raw milk. Why did my allergies stop? He wanted to do a human study on this. And the agency told him, nope, you can't do that. It's too dangerous.
Okay.
So he literally wrote back. He was like, well, okay, I'd like to study crack cocaine. They were like, okay, but you can't study raw milk. Okay.
That is crazy.
Place mark that. That's a story that will come out at the right time.
Okay, I don't want to steal your thunder, but that sounds like a great story. It sounds like a story that needs to come out.
Right. And so, I mean, it really goes into what you're saying, which is who is funding this? Who's preventing the certain studies from happening? Because we haven't been able to study it.
That's a really
meaningful
good question.
studies, only been anecdotal. And we have a couple of studies out of Europe, but again, very few on the benefits of raw milk.
I would say start with what does it benefit the most? Like allergies or certain types of cancer? Like what are people getting? What benefit are they seeing the most? And then find out the pharmaceutical company that is offering a solution for that ailment. And that's where you're going to find your culprit.
Well, if you listen to the stories, Brian, and you hear all of the anecdotal evidence that they dismiss because it doesn't matter, it's not scientific,
Right.
Then what it helps with is overall improved immunity, boost to the immune system, and helps decrease inflammation across the board. So we're not talking about something it's like one symptom. It's not that. It's that there's native bacteria in raw milk.
Mm-hmm.
All right, this FDA study says no, there's not, but there's lactobacillus bacteria in raw milk, and I actually have some right now on my counter. What happens with the raw cow milk, and this is true of cow, goat, sheep, camel, water buffalo, all the milks. If you just leave it out and think about 10,000 years of human history,
Right.
we did not have refrigeration, meaningful refrigeration, right? If you leave raw milk out, those native bacteria begin to digest the lactose and the casein in the milk and leave behind a different product. And in the process of digesting it, the bacteria create lactic acid.
Okay.
And at some point, that balance, I mean, right? Like that balance of fermentation, you get a preserved product. So we have cheese.
Right.
Right? So, of course, with a lot of the things that we think of as cheese, there's rennet added and some very specific bacteria are added. But if you just take the milk and you leave it, it's going to separate into curds and whey. So this is another thing about why it kind of doesn't matter if you leave your milk out. It never spoils. It just changes from one thing to another. So I had some milk in my fridge that was there just a little bit too long, right? Past that 3-week fresh mark. And so it's now on my countertop turning into clabber.
Wow, that's only with raw milk, right?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I've left out a gallon of Hood or Oakhurst and it turned green.
Exactly. So after clabber, so clabber is very similar to yogurt, but it's distinctively different. If you're thinking you're going to get yogurt, it tastes different. Right. Then it turns into curds and whey, where you have this big glob of curds on top and the whey on the bottom. And those curds you can strain and it becomes like ricotta cheese or even cream cheese. You can pair that with berries and honey or and herbs, and you have a fresh cheese.
That's amazing. I never knew that. That is amazing.
It's incredible. And just think about the culinary adventures that opens up.
I know, right? Well, it's just like, I mean, talk about like the perfect product, for, people out on the, out on the frontiers and everything. It's like, I mean, I feel bad for the first kid that his mom said, "Hey, eat that and see if it's edible." But, that must have been terrifying. But no, it makes sense because, and this is right up your alley too, because you're so curious. Like, I was amazed when like you gave me that piece of plant growing in my backyard. That's always there. I just thought it was a weed. And I had a massive bug bite that was just bothering me for days. And what was that again? That was
broadleaf plantain.
Yeah, so I chewed it up and I rubbed it on. That thing was gone in like 2 hours.
Isn't it amazing?
It is amazing. Just
God's creation and what we have access to if we look at the world around us.
Exactly. So, well, Liz, we're gonna have to maybe do to be continued at that point. But I like that last line. And I'd like to have you come back on. And I'd also like to, I'd love to have you on a debate sometime and get some pro FDA person on here sometime, like, pro pasteurized person. That'd be great. I don't know if I can find them. But I think people want to learn more. Would love to have you back soon. Because we're doing, we just had someone from the Beef Initiative on, so we're going full circle on food security. And you are the foremost expert, especially in this area, in my opinion. So before I do that, was there anything else you wanted to cover before we go?
Wow. I mean, that opens up a whole nother world of possibilities. So let's put the bookmark in there and
let's put the bookmark. Okay.
And bring it all next time.
I got to say, I'm going to do a podcast drinking raw milk the whole time. Better than
I love it.
Yeah, well, Naomi now, it's like I go down in the morning. She has a mason jar of raw milk ready for me to go. And that's how I start my day. I love it. It's so good.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So, and I know you guys, where you guys are at, I think we have more availability than you guys do, right?
Probably. I mean, the dairy where we get it is about an hour away.
Right. Yeah, we found a bunch of them up here, but we're not always up here either. And it is sad. You go down to like Brooklyn and places like that, and you can't find a lot of this fresh stuff. So, but Liz, I'm going to point everyone to your Substack for sure. Definitely get over there. I can't wait to read through this whole thing because this is almost like a survival guide. Seriously, like if you go through all your articles and interviews, there's so much information here, and this is like the kind of stuff my audience loves.
Great.
Because we're always looking for that vector of attack, and if I were the bad guys, I'd be going after dairy, and I'd be going after beef.
You're gonna get lots of raw milk mama stories on there, and
it's a great Substack. Everyone definitely subscribe and. Support people like Liz. Do a paid subscription if you can, but if not, definitely subscribe and share because it's how this stuff gets out. This is how we get it out, and that's the name of the game here. So, Liz, I'm going to give you the last word. Any advice and final thoughts you have for the audience before we call it a night?
It's all about food security, Brian, and that's where we overlap and come together and look at it from the same lens. It's really all about food security and getting responsible for your food.
Well, on that note, we will call it a night. And Liz, thank you so much. I'm going to make sure all of your links are in this description on Rumble. Make sure you follow the Rumble page over there as well. And we're going to see more of Liz, and she's in our circle of friends now, so we're going to see a lot of Liz. So you guys, if you have questions, definitely email me those questions so I could have those ready for the next episode when we have Liz on here again. So Liz, thank you so much for coming on and curing my ailments as well. And really quickly, I'm sure my audience would like to know, what do you think of that AR-15?
Oh, it's great. It's great. It's fun.
You're a good shot too. You did great.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on, Brian.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming on, and we will talk to you soon. So everyone, this has been Investigate Everything, talking about food security. And we will be back soon, and we will definitely have Liz back with us. So everyone have a great night. And don't forget to follow Investigate Everything over at dailyclout.io. Thank you.